Okay, hi everybody. I'm Dan Crocker. I'm with Minnesota Public Radio. I've lived in Duluth for about 12 years reporting on the region. And I'm proud to say that one of the very first things I did when I moved to Duluth was to become an owner of the co-op. I think a lot of you may not. I came from Flagstaff, Arizona, where there are a lot of natural food stores, but no co-ops. Duluth, Minnesota is pretty unique in all the food co-ops here. So I don't think a lot of people realize that, so it's something I think we have to be proud of. So I just wanted to say that. It's also my honor to be on stage with these three, pardon the expression, badass women farmers we're gonna have a conversation with tonight. I'm gonna introduce, starting from my left, we have Britt Johnson, who is an owner of Polish Farmer, which she started in 2020 in Moose Lake, where she grows heirloom dry beans. Next to Britt, we have Julianne Modis, who is co-owner with her husband Jason of Midway Meadows Farms in Esco, where she raises Scottish Highland cattle. And then Heather Marie Bloom, who is the owner of Rising Phoenix Community Farm in Barnum, right? Where she grows vegetables and flowers. All right. How about a round of applause for these three farmers? Because after all, they're more used to, toiling in the fields than they are speaking on stage to hundreds of people. So give them some props for being up here. So I want to chat a little bit and have you all tell your stories of basically becoming a food producer. Kind of your origin story and how you became a farmer. And so I'll have some follow-ups, but Britt, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, definitely. I am kind of used to talking in front of people. They're just like second and third graders though, because I'm also a special education teacher. But yeah, I got started with farming kind of from a sustainable living point of view. After graduating from college, I taught English abroad in Kazakhstan. And there I was submersed in a whole new world that I never knew existed. Everyone had a garden. Everyone raised an animal to slaughter. People would come together, families, to make these long meals, and I just wanted some of that when I came back home. So I started gardening and preserving food, and I said, can I do this more? I really like this, and can I make this a job? And so I started applying for farm internships and working at different operations, learning a lot, and I just fell in love with it. And it didn't take long to know that I wanted to incorporate this into my future. And a cool thing that I found when farming was the diversity of vegetables that existed. I almost felt lied to as a consumer about what a vegetable could be. I go, oh my gosh, there's tens of dozens different squashes, and you see 2 in the grocery store, and tomatoes and carrots and all those things that just taste better when you're growing them from a farm or your garden. And it didn't take long to find the heirloom beans section of that seed catalog, and I go, oh wow, there's more than just 2 types of beans. And I started trying them, and I got really excited, and I fell in love with them. And I think it's a natural human thing that if you find something you're really excited about, you want to share it with others. And so I just knew that had to be part of my farm. And hence, Polish Farmer kind of started there. And of course, I did need a farm that was just a side business, because I did want to always keep teaching. And it kind of just worked out.
Yeah, why heirloom dry beans?
The diversity. You have to love the beauty that they have, the unique flavors. They're not always easy to grow. They like to ripen at different times and grow in different ways, and that all just makes harvesting a little bit trickier. But you have to love the variety that's available and respect that history with the bean. Some of them go back hundreds of years, and just carrying that on.
And I have to ask, the name Polish Farmer. Tell us the story of that.
Oh, that's a shout out to my family, my homage right there. You know, a lot of us have a history with farming. We were just talking about that, and my grandpa farmed, and their grandpas farmed, and I just wanted to connect with that part of my family.
Thanks, Britt. Julianne, how about you? Tell us a little bit about how you started to raise cattle.
Scottish Highland beef.
Yeah, is that on? There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. Well, we are in Esco, Minnesota, and we are located on a historic farmstead. Esco used to be one of the largest dairy producers in the state of Minnesota. And so we acquired an abandoned dairy farm. And in 2010, we started to reestablish the farm, and we bought our first cows, 4 cows and 1 bull, in 2014. And it took us 7 years of any water skiers out there, you know, when you're like getting drugged through the water and then all of a sudden you pop up. It was quite a few years of getting drugged through the water, but we popped up. And Scottish Highland, it's a really unique heritage breed of beef. They're really ideally suited for Minnesota. They've got a really double coat. And they are outside 365 days a year, and they're incredibly hardy. We needed good foragers because Mother Nature definitely reclaimed that farmstead, so they helped us with the clearing efforts. And it was important to us in the community of Esco to retain that farmstead. You know, it's a beautiful place to live, and a lot of people like acreage, and to have a home on a 5-acre parcel of historic farmland, and it needs to remain farmland. You know, Jason and I both know what food insecurity feels like. And so for us, you know, food security was important, and we like the ability to be able to feed our friends and family with humanely raised heritage breed beef. So that's where we are.
Is it something you always wanted to do, or how did you, are you following a family tradition of farming as well?
So both of our grandparents were farmers. Jason comes from a historic farm family in the Black Hoof Valley of Minnesota, and my grandfather was also a big dairy farmer. And because of our ages, our fathers went to war, and they left farming. And a lot of the farming practices that we're using in our farm right now are really our grandfather's practices. Jason's grandfather would say, you can't taste beef the way I was used to tasting it, with the establishment of big corn and soybean fields. And this is grass-fed, grass-finished beef that tastes like historic beef. And so we were both exposed to it. But I think the dream was really, how do we keep this big parcel of land in farmland? How can we do that? And so we chose cattle. Yeah. And I mean, beans might be, less of a 24/7, 365-day operation. I mean, there's both pluses and minuses, but the reason why we're able to do what we're able to do is because we have community support. And I know we're going to talk about the grant, but we've also got other farmers in the region that help us out when we need help, and you can't do it by yourself.
Takes a community, right?
You betcha.
All right, Heather Marie Bloom, let's turn to you. Tell us about Rising Phoenix Community Farm and how you got started.
Yeah, I did not grow up farming. It's been a couple generations. My great-grandfather, who I never met, farmed in southern Minnesota. And my parents had a garden. It was mostly flowers. I grew up in the suburbs. And then just over the years had friends who started a Catholic worker farm. Then just kind of everywhere I went had a garden, so I was able to start a garden, and then moved to Duluth, where there's such a great community of farmers and a real support for those farmers, and found myself a CSA member of Northern Harvest, where I'm sure you've all bought your carrots, or for the food farm, and then interned with Rick and Carola, and at some point during the season, Rick was like, "Yep, you're ready. go do it. Just like that. And so I started the farm by myself in 2011. I was full-time farming while working 2 to 3 part-time jobs. And I did not own land. I think we have this image of having family land and being passed down, and that's not the reality for many of us. And so I was a landless farmer. In 10 years, I moved 5 times. So I would set up and then have to take down, and then set up and have to take down. I moved our deer fence twice, moved a high tunnel 3 times, which just all sounds very ridiculous. And then the pandemic hit. I should back up. In 2018, met my partner, and now John has joined me. And then, pandemic hit, and we thought, we've got a little bit of time on our hands, let's look for a farm. And so we bought Johnson Family Farm in Barnum, and it was a 4-generation farm, and they live in the area. Ed Johnson lives down the road and is very excited that we have taken over the family farm. And since 2011, done CSA, vegetable CSA, flowers, and a farm stand. Mm-hmm.
So you touched a little bit on just the work that's been involved in the sacrifice. I might ask all of you this, and sorry I didn't prep you on this, but why? I mean, it's so much work. Why is this something that you want to do, working multiple jobs? Why is this so important to you?
I mean, first of all, we need to feed ourselves. We are co-op shoppers, but it is sort of nice to walk in and kind of breeze right through the produce section. I don't have to buy any produce, which feels pretty nice. In the middle of winter time, we sometimes do. But so first of all, it's feeding ourselves. And we talk about urban food deserts, but there's also rural food deserts. Where I live in Barnum, there is not a grocery store. And so we take a lot of pride in feeding our neighbors. But then, we also bring food into Duluth, so we're also helping feed the rest of, the broader community as well.
How about you, Julianne? Any thoughts on the why the heck you would do this question?
I think if you want to do something incredibly empowering and game-changing and life-changing, I mean, the biggest decision you have control over is how you feed yourself, and we don't have control over everything else that happens, what happens at school or at work or in your community or in your environment. But how you choose to feed yourself and to your family is the most empowering decision that you get to make every single day. And so, like Heather Marie said, how we feed ourselves, and then being able to offer that to our friends, neighbors, family, and community, I think is incredibly empowering. We practice the philosophy of regenerative farming, which is in harmony with the environment. So it's not just like, okay, what are the numbers? How much did we make? What's the production levels? It's soil health, water quality. And we've been thinking a lot about water the past couple summers, I'll tell you that. What our energy inputs are, how we're consuming energy. It's kind of this big, holistic kind of ecosystem way of looking at farming. And I think it's incredibly empowering, and I think all of us need to take responsibility, for ourselves and for our community. And so it is a passion, it's not a vocation, it's an avocation. And if we have people like, oh, I love what you're doing, that sounds so cool, you gotta be committed 110%. The cows don't care if it's your birthday, if you have COVID, if it's cold out, if it's hot out. The cows need what the cows need, so you better be committed.
And Britt, I want to ask you this as well. And I should say, before we came out here, Britt and I were talking, because she mentioned she's a teacher. So Septembers are an interesting time, right? Because you're prepping for class. You have a bunch of second graders who are not used to being in a classroom. And then you have harvest time as well. So this is a lot of work. Why is this something that you want to pursue?
Yeah, luckily I work in a rural school in Willow River where they don't really care too much if you have dirt underneath your fingernails. They're kind of, those kids are kind of used to that. And yeah, it doesn't always make a lot of sense. And you two, yeah, said it very, very well. Yeah, it's keeping that seed diversity alive. I think that's a huge part of why I want to do what I do, because it is challenging. And just that passion of just believing in what you're doing and then having that community support, but, showing interest in what you have, it also drives you. But I also encourage everyone to do it on their own. Anyone that asks, hey, are your seeds, or can your beans be used as seed? I'm like, yeah, you go for it.
And we'll find out how hard it really is, right? Well, we're here in part to talk about the Grow Local Food Fund, which we heard about. Half of your rounding up at the end of every purchase of the co-op goes to the Grow Local Food Fund, which has helped farmers around the region. I did chatting with Marcy beforehand. Let me consult my notes. I think I have this right. Last year gave out 7 grants, roughly around $7,000 each. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. But Heather Marie, I'm going to start with you this time. Could you talk a little bit about the impact that the Grow Local Food Fund has had on you and your business?
Yeah, when we applied, we were hoping that the money would all go towards restoration of our barn. We have a very old, non-traditional looking barn. We had kind of 2 areas in the barn that we really needed to use that was sort of a hazard for not only just walking, but just was sort of hard to use. And so we had truckloads of gravel brought in, and it was leveled. And so we created this one separate space off the side of the barn that is now our pack shed. So when on a hot day, which is really great, it's on the north side, vegetables are brought in, they're washed, weighed, packed, and then brought into our walk-in cooler. So that space has been created for that. And then what we call the big bay of the barn had an incredible slope. We actually raised the floor level 2 feet on one end so it could be a little bit more flattened. And that's been an event space. We had a yoga retreat this summer. We had a flower arranging workshop. And then we had a field day with soil and water and U of M extension that community came out for. So it's been great to be able to have that event space. We can kind of think the future, kind of having an indoor space, which I've never had before. And then it also happened to be the dance place for our wedding. And so, so we got to benefit from that as well. Yeah, it was tremendous to be able to have that money and that it's a space that's been created and that we'll be able to use it for many years to come. So
I'm curious, how important is it nowadays? You mentioned like the events that you're doing now, and I think a lot of farmers are doing that, right, to try to diversify their income. Is that something that's really critical, you think, for you and others maybe moving forward?
Yeah, it's hard to just farm. It's got to be more than that. And so, yeah, you might have to have, we were just saying beforehand, I don't know of any farmer that doesn't have an off-farm job, or at least their partner has an off-farm job. Like I don't know any farmers that exists. And so you're kind of always hustling. And it's, okay, we're growing vegetables, but that's not quite doing it. Okay, so could we do this workshop? Could we have this field day? Could we? And so it's adding on. It might be making things more crazy and more complicated, but you're diversifying, and that sort of has to be the name of the game in order to be able to do what you're doing.
Julianne, how about you? Could you talk a little bit about how the Grow Local Food Fund helped your business?
Yeah. So we received a grant this year, and first of all, it was just great validation for what we're doing because, I don't know, what do you think, honey? About every 6 months, we're ready to just quit. Why are we doing this? This is so hard. We're terrible. And so just to have the community say, we believe in you and we're willing to put some dollars your way was a huge boost and validation. So we're a solar farm. We are powered with solar energy, and so we're always looking at what's our power usage? Where are the savings? And watering cattle in a Minnesota winter, keeping that water unfrozen and heated and available is a huge power use. And then just the use of water. We've had some drought years and an extreme drought this year. And so how can we conserve water? So technology advances, and there's a new product online, and it's a drinking fountain for cattle, and it's on demand. And so it's not just an open water receptacle that we're constantly heating, that's constantly evaporating. So game changer, commissioned yesterday.
Really, just yesterday?
Yes. So, and we're dorks, so we've got the power meter. So all winter long, you will bet I'll be looking at that. Okay, what are we doing? What are we doing this year?
Can you paint a picture for us? I mean, does the cow walk up and nudge it with its nose or something?
Yes.
Or,
Yeah.
Really?
So it's a big ball that they're floating in there because we're in a training period. So the girls are out there.
You have to teach the cows how to do this.
Yeah, we have to teach the cows how to do this, and then in a week or so, they have to press their nose, and water will be dispensed for them to drink. And they drink a lot of water. I mean, it's funny, but it's not. I mean, it is their life, and especially in the middle of the winter when they're expending all of these calories to stay warm. It's critical. So we got this great new water cup, which is amazing. And we got a manure spreader. I mean, talk about sexy, people. We are talking about the best thing ever. So, in the winter, it builds up, and we're looking at climate resiliency and how we can improve our soil health and to have an efficient way to spread that on our field and not purchase chemical fertilizer, have it trucked in and whatever, and, biosecurity, keeping that manure on our farm and spreading it is huge. So we found a used manure spreader, which works like a champ. It's about 50 years old, but it's all mechanical, well maintained. And so we had a really dry summer, but we put that manure out here. We've had a wet fall. You would not believe how the pasture has bounced back. I mean, it's going to be awesome next year.
Because of the recent rain.
Yes, and to be able to,
And manure.
Okay, what can we do this year? And are we going to spend the couple thousands of dollars we need? And it turns out you can spend as much money as you want on a manure spreader. I mean, they're an expensive unit that you use maybe one time a year. We wanted to pull the trigger, and we did with this grant.
And when we were chatting at the table, your husband was saying, I just want to drill down on the importance of the Grow Local Food Fund, because he was saying this is something that's just really hard to access from other sources, right? To convince somebody to, hey, give me some money. I want to buy a 50-year-old manure spreader that I'm going to use once a year, right?
Right. It's extremely difficult. And so to have Whole Foods to say, yeah, and the water cup is another great example, because it was Whole Foods and Minnesota Power that said, yeah, we'll chip a couple bucks your way because you're going to reduce the power load on our grid, because our solar array is part of the grid. So, I mean, it was the game changer for us. And it makes us more environmentally sustainable and just as sustainable as an operation. If we can't afford to do this, we don't exist anymore. So, I mean, it's just been fantastic. I just am so grateful. So thank you all, owners. Yeah.
Okay, Britt, your turn. Talk about the Grow Local Food Fund and what it meant for Polish farmer.
Yeah, the first thing that popped in my mind what did the grant do for me? And I go, well, it saved me my sanity and a healthy relationship with my partner.
That's worth a lot.
Because the most expensive thing and the only thing you have limited of as a farmer is your time. And so what the grant gave me was time-saving equipment. And I bought a small-scale thresher and then some new winnowing equipment. And so now that I harvest the beans by hand, I have this nifty little machine that I can put all the plants through, and it will break them out of the pods. And so the beans go in one spot, the material goes in the other spot, and then I just have to winnow and then sort still and clean. But that time saver just made the operation more viable. And I was able to expand, just confident that I can plant more beans. And since getting the grant 2 years ago, I've grown an average of 200 more pounds per year, and I hope to do more in the future. So just that, the time-saving piece, the labor-saving piece is just critical. It made me want to keep doing it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, last question is something that we are going to be asking all of you to participate in as well. Something we're asking everyone here, and I'm going to ask these folks, and maybe they'll prompt you with some ideas, but to offer 3 words of hope for the future. And we do have, before we hand out door prizes, and so there's pens and there's note cards at the table, so you all can fill that out over the next few minutes and then drop it off. There's going to be a spot, I think, to drop it off as you leave the event tonight. So think about that, but in the meantime, for some inspiration, we're going to go to these 3 again and ask you what your 3 words of hope for the future are. And who should we start with? How about Julianne? You haven't had a start yet. We'll start with you in the middle. 3 words of hope for the future.
All right. People expect better.
Well, you need to expound on that.
We can do this. We can do this. We can grow sustainable food. We can support each other. Don't give up. Expect better. Expect better out of yourself, out of your neighbors, out of everyone. I think we should expect better.
Heather Marie?
Well, my 3 words are actually the same word, which feels like a cop-out, but it's community. And for us, there's kind of 3 levels of community. There's our local community in Barnum that has supported our farm stand and supported us and really excited about what we're doing. But then there's a step further, there's the Duluth community, and when we've been involved with CHUM and gathering new members in the Duluth area and really excited about that. But there's also the farming community. There's more and more of us women farmers, which I find a lot of support in. There's the CSA Guild, so there's a number of us that are CSA farmers in the area, and it's great to have just an email away someone that can go, yes, and can kind of help you out with that. But we're also supporting each other as well. So Britt lives down the road, and we send CSA members her way for her beans. Another farmer down the road grows meat, and so we could send them their way. So it's just all those levels of community are really important to us.
Britt, how about you? 3 words of hope for the future.
Yeah, this was kind of difficult for me to come up with too, and I just came up with engage, adapt, and grow. The engage was engage in something, engage in the land, engage with your community, engage in something you're passionate about. Adapt is something we will have to do in the future, and it's okay to grow with that and change, and that's kind of what I came up with.
Thank you. And before we wrap this up, I wanted to give you all a chance. I imagine there may be some people here who might be interested in learning how to support your farms or where they can get your goods. So why don't you real quickly tell everybody how they can find you. Heather Marie will start over and work your way over.
So we are on social media, so Facebook and Instagram, Rising Phoenix Community Farm, and then that's also our website as well. And we have a newsletter that you can engage with. And then there's also the CSA Guild. So if you are looking for a CSA, there's many of us from which to shop from. And so those are the ways, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep, and we are on Facebook, Midway Meadows Farm. I'm on Instagram, FarmWife218, if you want to see cows running to ZZ Top. Different reels for entertainment. And our email is midwaymeadowfarms@gmail.com. So appreciate everybody's support tonight.
FarmWife218, all right. Yeah. I don't go on Instagram often, but I'm going to go on it tonight, I think. All right, Britt.
And then I have PolishFarmer.com, and bean sales will probably open by the end of the month.
Big round of applause for these 3 farmers.